Hi, I clicked onto today's tropical tidbit for Tuesday. Here's our disturbance sitting in the southwest Caribbean. Lots of convection going off right now, retreating a little bit southeast of the position it was at yesterday. The convection is not really organized in any kind of fashion over here. It's just sort of bubbling away. But low pressure is starting to consolidate a little bit more in here. It's not as spread out of a system as it has been over the last couple of days, but it is still pretty far south, close to the monsoon trough over Panama here, and we'd like to see this start to migrate a little bit farther north before it can truly start to develop. You can see the jet stream is right here pressing down on it, pushing dry air in. If we look at the water vapor, here's the dry air impeding in. Eventually this jet stream will start to get out of the way. You can see this upper low over South Florida finally starting to make its move west-southwest down here, and as that moves into the Gulf of Mexico, this jet stream will lift a little bit farther northwest, allowing this ridge to balloon up and allow a lower shear environment and more semi-favorable conditions for this to possibly try to develop, as the models continue to kind of hint at. An interesting thing to look at here is the mid-level steering, which I'm going to tie into the models here in a second. Here's that broad mid-level trough sticking its nose all the way down to the Caribbean. Notice the tropical ridge in the Atlantic pulling a southerly flow in the mid-levels up from northern South America. What's interesting is I think that the models are starting to show and expose what the main reason for their weakening of this low is. Most of the recent runs have gone from development to no development and strung it out to the northeast and kind of weakened the whole thing. This is the Canadian day 6. It does have a closed low up here near Haiti, but this actually is not our southwest Caribbean system. You can see that back here. What actually happened is the model brought something up out of South America and swung it northwest around this low and developed it in here near Haiti, and it eventually strings it out to the northeast and weakens it and doesn't really allow this to develop down here. And it's entertaining to think that it could possibly be this tropical wave that comes across and eventually gets drawn north in that mid-level flow, considering that tropical waves are strongest at the mid-levels of the atmosphere. But a lot of the models are actually showing this now. You can see it on the NOGAPS and the GFS, and even the European over here, which has this kind of come north, but you've got the trailing trough back here, which indicates that part of this rotated up out of South America, which is interesting. I am a little bit reluctant to believe that anything that does come out of South America is going to end up stronger and more consolidated than what's already been back here for days. I have a feeling that this is going to remain a little bit more dominant in here. But we'll see what happens. This is definitely the reason I think now that the models are weakening this, is that it gets competition from here that comes north and develops in the jet stream and then scoots off, taking most of the energy out, leaving only a weak piece behind that can't really develop. Again, this is the European day 4. This is day 7. Notice a big, strong trough in the upper levels developing over the western Atlantic. This is the strongest model in terms of the upper trough in the West Atlantic, which is interesting because it brings a lot of energy out to the east-northeast, leaves a weak low back here, 1006 millibars. That doesn't really do anything and doesn't get trapped far enough under the ridge to get under favorable conditions for development. What's interesting, though, is the UK Met. If we look at day 6, 500 millibar level, notice that the trough is weaker over here, and that's mainly because of this polar vortex over Hudson Bay that's diving southeastward, forcing this to be weaker and scoot off to the east over here. And again, this is because of that negative NAO pattern where we have a lot of low heights up here and a lot of troughs rotating around and short waves coming across, keeping the ridge flat in here and also keeping this trough in check over the West Atlantic. And notice this banana ridge over here, incubating this region to the south of it over the Northwest Caribbean. And guess what's under there at the surface? A fairly deep low pressure system the UK Met is showing here, perhaps a tropical depression or a weak tropical storm west of Jamaica. And what's attractive about this model is the fact that it's been very consistent for the last several days, marching forward in the timeline, showing the scenario, showing the low pressure developing down here, developing down here, and then slowly moving northwestward. And it's always attractive to look at the model that's very consistent, because we love consistency in the models when we're looking for support for a forecast. What's interesting is the NAIFS here actually also shows it a little bit farther west on the ensemble mean, west of Jamaica, more consolidated, and what variance there is concentrated over here as opposed to way out near Hispaniola. And so does the Canadian ensemble mean, again, centered over the Cayman Islands here. Not too strong, but you can see this ridge sort of arcing over here with a weaker upper trough because of that vortex over Hudson Bay that the European isn't really picking up on too strongly, allowing this to sit down here. This kind of scenario would allow a greater chance for development of this. I'm leaning more towards the camp that this comes a little bit slowly out here to the northeast. I imagine that there could be some sort of a low pressure that tries to develop in here, but I think this will stay a little bit more dominant. I could see it getting pulled a little bit northeast in here, but taking its time in this area, not scooting out right away, but coming up, perhaps curving a little bit farther north, and in here, if it gets close to Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, could have a chance at trying to become a tropical depression, and then I think eventually it might get taken out to the northeast over here by that trough in time. Where it will get taken northeast is in question. It could get taken out fairly far south over here, or it could curve a little bit farther northeast first, northwest, excuse me, and bring more rain to the areas of Florida. That would definitely like to see that. The details, of course, will be worked out as we move on in the timeline. It's a little bit too soon to get specific on this, but you can see that there's evidence it's here. It's going to be migrating north into more favorable conditions that may allow it to try to develop. Won't get too strong either way, but it'll be something to watch in here, certainly for rainfall concerns in here. Not concerns, but joys if it actually does make it that far north. So we'll continue to monitor the situation. Alright, that's it for today. Thanks for watching.